Hello. We're glad you've decided to join us and listen to our featured Sermon of the Week. This week's message is presented by Pastor Henry Wright and entitled, The Fire Next Time. We hope that you enjoy this message and that God uses it to encourage and bless you while you listen.
Let us go back and read the book of Daniel just again. Appreciate Clyde sharing that passage with us. Daniel 3, starting with verse 16. And join me, if you would, in the reading of this passage. I have the King James Version. Shall we? Verse 16 together. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered and said to the king, O Nebuchadnezzar, we are not careful to answer thee in this matter. Notice the confidence in that phraseology. We are not careful to answer thee in this matter. These words are rooted in a kind of almost immeasurable faith. In other words, we're sure that what we're about to say about God, you can count on it. We're not nervous about it. We're sure. Now, what is it that they're sure about? Verse 17. Read. If it be so, our God whom we serve is what? Deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us out of thine hand, O king. Now, there are two sets of confidence in the next text. First, he's able. He's able. Now, understand, Janine, that he's able does not necessarily mean he will. So the two sets of confidences in the text. First, he's able. See, God was able to prevent Katrina, wasn't he? He's able to prevent cancer. He can prevent anything. He's able. But faith in God's ability is not necessarily faith in God's decisions. Believing that God will do it is one thing. Accepting that he won't is another. Come on. Don't get quiet now. So their next statement is, and he will. He's able and he will. That's two sets of faith, Richard. See, it's frankly, there's no great, it doesn't take a whole lot of faith to say, God is able to save me. Well, yeah, he's able. But then to say, he will. Let's read the next verse, verse 18. Verse 18. Ready? But if not, now, Allison, we're seeing some real faith. He's able, he will, but if he decides contrary to what we've said, we still won't bend. Could somebody say amen? Now, this is my favorite story in the Bible. If I could just, Pastor Boyd, if my life could just come to this, I believe I'd be all right, Gerard. If I could just live in this limousine of faith, ride in it every day. He's able, he will, but if he won't, I will not negotiate with sin. Woo! Have mercy, Jesus. My subject, the fire next time. The fire next time. Something very special, we said, is happening in the book of Daniel. But let's first review the things we've learned. The things we've learned thus far from the book. Here we go. Ready? Let's read. We got a little problem here. Let's get the, there we go. All right, let's go. Daniel is what? Number 2, Daniel represent all of us. Number 3, we must reject, which is represented by, keep reading, and have a, of the vegetables and water, which represents the, go to the next one. Number 4. Ready? Read. We learn that the is God's. Now this thing here on my ear, Moon, is going south on me. Where's my buddy Moon? This is not staying up here. Yeah. Let's keep reading up here. Moon will fix this. We having trouble getting this on the screen? Okay. Then let's go. All right, here we go. It's just the devil, folk. Just the devil. He knows we got a good word today. Number 5, read. And then we learn that the prayer and trust run throughout the book of Daniel. Real prayer results in trust. The devil's frustrated right now because we're reading it anyhow. Yes, sir. Reading it anyhow. And then the last thing we learned is, we learned last week that forcing God's word to meet our will is a common. Okay, now we're building on this. Now I told you that there are 2 things going on simultaneously in Daniel. First, God is trying to convert a wicked king. But then on top of that, Dulcie, besides trying to convert a wicked king, and in chapter 1 he is drawing as he sees these young men who don't eat his food, and in chapter 2 he has drawn him as he sees these young men interpret the dream. And we learned that you cannot take God's word and make it fit what you want. You have to take God's word as it is. Remember we learned that? And we also learned that you can't use the Spirit of God as an excuse for disobeying God. Now I wonder if we can hazard getting that statement up there. The Spirit was not given, nor can it be. Can we? Yeah, ready? Let's read. Come on. The Spirit was not given, nor can it ever be bestowed to supersede the Bible. Now, I don't want you to ever forget this quote. Because I warned you that in the last days, many people are rising up and saying, I was impressed by God to do so and so and so and so. But this statement is saying that I don't care what impression you have, if what you've been impressed to do is contrary to God's word, then that impression didn't come from God. Let's read it. For the scriptures explicitly state, come on, that the word of God is the, what is it? Keep reading, by which all teaching and experience. See, I'm afraid of these peculiar experiences some of us are having in the last days. But if the experience is contrary to the word, it didn't come from who? Let's keep reading. Come on. Great reproach has been cast upon the work of the Holy Spirit by heirs of a class that, claiming enlightenment, profess that they are governed by impressions which they regard as the voice of God in the soul. Pause. This, Robin Springfield, is describing a growing phenomena in the world today. So you listen to a lot of these mega church preachers, and they get up and talk about they've been impressed by the Lord. If they are impressed by the Lord, it will be proven that what they do and say is found in God's Word. Let me state it frankly, Alice. God gives no impressions to any human heart contrary to His already written Word. I don't think I can say it any plainer than that. It just doesn't happen. I don't care how sincere the person is. I don't care how many years they've been in the church. If what they say the Spirit gave them to do is contrary to His Word, then, Rick, we don't have an impression from the Lord. All right. Let's keep reading. But the Spirit, come on, but the Spirit that controls them is not reading this following of impressions to the neglect of the Scriptures. So we learned that last week. That's a quote I don't want you to forget. So the first thing going on is God is drawing this heathen king, Nebuchadnezzar, to Him through various events. But the second thing going on is that while God is wooing this heathen king, Nebuchadnezzar, He's also teaching these believers, Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, while He's drawing on this side, He's teaching on this side. He's growing these Hebrew boys. In chapter 1, they find out that when they make up their minds to do right, God stands by them. In chapter 2, they find out that when they get on their knees and pray and seek God, He comes through for them. Now, in chapter 1 and in chapter 2, God is getting them ready for chapter 3. Are you with me? See, what you need to understand, Eric Desarmais, is this. And everybody ought to be listening as I talk to Derek. Don't forget this, particularly in these last days. Don't forget this. Any trial or experience you're having now, any trial or experience you're having now is only preparing you for a trial and experience you're going to have. Thank you. Thank you, Leroy. God never stops working on you. Never. You never, young lady, arrive. You're always journeying to the next place. Are you listening to me? So the experiences of Daniel 1, where they stood on the diet and didn't bend, only prepared them for the experience of Daniel 2, where they trusted in Him by prayer, which only prepared them for the experience in Daniel 3, where they're going to face the fire next time. See, God is ultimately getting you ready for the fire. And in this sermon, I want you to think of the fire as the next trial to come, understanding that the next trial to come is always tougher than the trial that just passed. Now, if I could get my congregation to understand this, a lot of you would complain less. Just know, now, I know this is not encouraging some of you saying, oh, Lord have mercy. Just know that if you got through it, God is saying, okay. I mean, this is why we pass. See, we don't pass people from the third grade to the second. Hello? Now, we may keep them in the second, but we don't send them back to because the second is getting them ready for the third. It's always higher, more, deeper. Those of us who lift weights know that if you've lifted 50 pounds for a while with your arms, or 35 pounds, where you got to go next if you want your arms to keep building? You don't go back to 15 pounds. What do? You add more weight. You add more weight. And you see what happens when you successfully go through a trial. God says, oh, well, they're ready now. Somebody said, now I know I'm going to fail the next trial. No, that's not biblical math. That's not biblical math. That's not biblical math. I want to teach you 5 things from Daniel 3. How many? Here we go. See, we're trying to understand, Sister Duthie, how did these 3 boys stand when everybody else bowed? do that? How do you do that? How do you hold on when everybody else is letting go? You see, one of the things that I admired, in spite of how bad Katrina was, there were still people in the midst of that struggle. They didn't lose it. They kept their faith. See, the cameras don't show them. They kept their faith. They kept their resolve. They did not loot. They did not kill. They did not become angry. They held on. How do people do that in the midst of everybody else? It's because there's something special going on. But how did these boys come to that? And what lessons do we learn before we look at how they got through it? Lesson number one. Believers are always watched. Can we get that up there? Well, maybe not. Believers are always watched. What are they? Go to Daniel 3, verses 8 through 12. Daniel 3, verses 8 through 12. Once you get on your job and you say to folk, I'm a Christian, they watch you. Daniel 3, verses 8 through 12. You see it? Let's read. Everybody. Wherefore at that time. Go on and read. Don't be afraid to read. O king, do what? That's the political stuff. Verse 10. Thou, king, hast made a decree that every man that shall hear the sound of the flute, harp, sackbut, psaltery, and the dulcimer, and all kinds of music, shall do what? Verse 11, and that he should be. Now, verse 12. What do they say? Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, these men, O king, have what? Pause, McPhee, pause. How did they know that? Yeah, their eyes were open while they were praying. See, there's always somebody watching you when you say you're a Christian. And so let me ask this profound question. I think it's profound. You won't be so impressed. Let me ask this profound question. Are you living a life that can be watched? Are you a watchable Christian? If somebody decided to get up tomorrow morning and follow you all day Sunday, what would they see? Where would you stop? Where would you shop? What would you be watching on the television before the sun sets tomorrow? Are you a watchable Christian? Or are you a person who's living a life, you say, I just rather not be watched right now. I'm not very watchable right now. See, God has always wanted the faith of His people to create interest. Interest. You recall the story of Esther? Remember that story? And her uncle Mordecai. And Haman had been made the big shot. And as Haman would ride by, everybody would bow down. What did Mordecai do? They didn't bow down. His faith affected the outcome for an entire nation. But in 2 Corinthians 3, verse 2, Paul says something very, very vital. You turn there with me, and you ought to mark this text in your Bible as you've never marked it before. 2 Corinthians 3 and verse 2. This is a text that ought to be circled in your Bible. Maybe the yellow marker will work here. This is a very important text. 2 Corinthians 3, what verse? Verse 2. Ready? Oh, I'd love to see those Bibles working. Come on, read. Ye are our... Oh, written where? Read by whom? Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You are an open letter to the world. There are people, and you've heard preachers say this before, but let me say it again. Permit me to say it again. There are people who know nothing about the seventh day being the Sabbath. They don't know anything about any special diet. They think everything's all right to eat. They don't know anything about returning tithe. They spend the money the way they please. They don't know anything about any of that. But they know when they come in contact with somebody who's straight, who's good, who's decent, who's reliable. That they know. And I couldn't help but think, as I looked at the tragedy of Katrina, and by the way, there are several Seventh-day Adventist families who've been caught up in this, who've lost everything. And I couldn't help but think as I reviewed my notes earlier this morning, are they watchable? See, how do you do in the crisis? Or do you get irritable? Does your language change? Does your face change? You know, some people are hard to be around under pressure. Don't look around. Keep your eyes straight. Just keep your eyes straight. Some folks you don't want to be near when trouble comes. Their whole demeanor changes. And you had mothers and fathers and some of the pictures, older people looting and robbing. These are decent people. I disagree with Brother Robertson, Pat Robertson, who really needs to find a zipper for his lips when he called these people animals. He's going home to his mansion. Wait until you've walked in somebody's moccasins before you describe who they are. These were decent people. Many of them are people who wouldn't hurt a fly, but now they're stealing water and stealing bread and stealing food. Because life is now revealing to them that there are certain pressures, there are certain things they cannot take. And I'm saying to you, with all the passion of my soul, that you've got to understand that the day is coming when God will see what kind of letter you are. And having your name on the roll of the Seventh-day Adventist Church will not be sufficient. The second thing we learn from chapter 3 is that believers will soon face decrees hard to live by. Go to Daniel 3. Go back there, Daniel 3. I need to pick up my pace here. Daniel 3. I get carried away talking about this stuff, so I'm so burdened for you. Daniel 3. And this time, we'll look at verse 4. Verse 3, then verse 4. Then the princes, the governors, the captains, the judges, the treasurers, the counselors, the sheriffs, the rulers, the provinces were gathered together unto the dedication of the image that Nebuchadnezzar the king had set up. And they stood before the king, they stood before the image that Nebuchadnezzar had set up. And a herald cried aloud, to you it is commanded, O people, nations, and languages, that at the time ye hear, list the instruments, you should bow down and worship. Everybody's attention now. You're about to face some strange decrees. You're about to face some strange decrees. Ultimately, the laws of man and the laws of God cannot occupy the same space. Nor can they occupy the same heart. It's all in the Bible. Revelation 12:17, Revelation 13, Matthew 10, Luke 21, John 15, Timothy 3. All they that live godly shall suffer persecution. Decrees are coming. Laws are coming. You know, if New Orleans ought to teach you anything, it's how quickly we can go from civilized to uncivilized. How quickly we can go from normal law to martial law. How quickly, just a few hours, and everything has changed. And decrees are passed that are contrary to the norm. And I'm asking the question today, are you ready for the fire this time? A lot of us Adventists have been studying Revelation 12 and 13 for years, and we still are saying, I don't see how that can happen. I don't see we could ever come to the day when you have to keep a certain day in this country. You are closer than you think. Because great controversy makes it clear that the Lord's going to humble this country with one catastrophe after another, and finally in desperation, she says they will reach to a false image of religion to save themselves. And you're going to look like a sore thumb sticking up and say, well, I can't join in because I believe so-and-so and so-and-so. And then decrees shall be passed. And will you have the guts to stand for God? I say by His grace, you will. You will. Don't get afraid today. You will. Have some confidence in yourself. Believe in what God can do in you. You'll stand. You'll straighten your back. Sure, you will. Don't talk yourself into being a wimp. Straighten up your back and say, by the grace of God, I will stand to the last day. As a man thinketh, so is he. Don't think fear. Don't think giving up. Don't think worry. Think trust in God. Face the furnace. Some of you have done it already. Some of you are the only Adventists in your family. You catch hell every week. But you stand, don't you? Go on and say amen for yourself. You stand up. You don't laugh at the dirty jokes at the office. You don't do the things they do. You stand. Believe in yourself. Number three, first point I made was, believers are always watched. 2, they'll face degrees hard to live by. I'm rushing. I know I'm rushing. 3, believers' faith affects others for good or bad. See how you act. Daniel 3:13. Daniel 3:13. Look at that. Look at that. See it? Read. Then, come on, I need help. Then Nebuchadnezzar, in his rage and fury, commanded to bring Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Then they brought these men before the king. You know, doing right does not always make you popular. I have to stick this in. Especially when you're around a bunch of so-called believers and they're doing something they have no business doing, and then you decide you're not going to join in, and you find out how mean church members can be. See how you said amen? You've been there. Everybody said, amen. Yeah, oh Lord, I've been there. Yeah, I can feel you. I can feel you. I can feel you. You're expecting at least the saints will hold you up. And it's the saints that are talking about you because you won't gossip. You won't do other things that the saints do when they're together. The religion made Nebuchadnezzar mad. Made him mad. Now, I'm going to ask a ridiculous question. So this is really this is really not a good, but I'm going to ask it anyhow. Man. Preacher's license. You ever been so righteous you made somebody mad? Now, lest you get confused, dear lady, I'm not talking about arrogant Adventism where you act like you're better than everybody else. I mean, you just make up your mind you're not going to fold. And so the boss is saying, what's the big deal about one day? You can't come in one time. How many of you have been through the one-time speech with the boss? Go on, get your hand up. Yeah, just one time. And you decide you will not rationalize. You're not going to work. No, I won't be in. Just had a member give me this speech last week. And I could see the smile on his face. He just said, Pastor, I said, I'm not coming in. And so the boss to leave permanent worry in him. So as he left on Friday, I'll be looking for you tomorrow, the boss said. And the member was wise. They didn't turn around again and say, I won't be in. That's your boss. Don't be an idiot. That's just your boss. He just turned and walked on out. Sabbath morning, he was at CPC. And we ate dinner together. Remember, we were eating dinner together. I said, I don't know what's going to happen on Monday, Pastor. I said, just go on in. Pack your lunch and go on in for a full day's work. And he did, and he called me about 10 minutes. He said, Elder, I said, guess what? So when I walked in, the boss said, and walked away. At some point, you have to reach the point where you're not going to let anybody influence your life for God. Mother, father, sister, brother, son, daughter, best friend, boss, neighbor, enemy, nobody. Nobody. Wednesday morning I was speaking to my dad, 87-year-old father. 2 days a week he goes and speaks to dope addicts. My old man. So he had me speak to him this past Wednesday. And I had a very frank talk with him, and I told him, I said, don't let anybody tell you how high you can rise. You see, ladies and gentlemen, the best thing that could happen to some people sitting in this congregation right now, the best thing that could happen to you is that you finally decide you belong to God, you are somebody, and you're going to stop letting people push you around about your religion and faith. Just be calm. See, just be calm. I mean, I'm at a family reunion on another side of my family. And everything there was stuff I could not eat. And my aunt, who I love dearly, what's the big deal about a mouthful of pork, she said. That's what she said, in front of everybody. What's the big deal about a mouthful of pork? I said, it's no big deal to me. I said, but it's a big deal to Jesus. And so, Richard, I didn't eat. Now, I said, well, how things would work. Then, Curtis, when the meal was over, several members of the family came quietly. I don't blame you. That pork is nasty, isn't it? One of my cousins said, I was going to see what you was going to do. And by the way, he's now taking Bible studies. So our faith can affect other people for good or bad. And then, last point. Whew. A believer's faith is not based on possible outcomes, but on trust in God's character. Let me take you back to that verse. This thing, Glenn, this thing gets me so excited, man, I can hardly stand it. Look at here. Verse 18. But if not, but if what? That is, if we don't get spared. I wish somebody would get excited with me. If we don't get spared, what are we going to do? We ain't bound down. Now, listen to me, Jacob. Listen to me, everybody. Mary, you can't deal with God based on outcomes.
Amen.
Because God may do the exact opposite of what you prayed. You have to deal with God based on your trust in His character. So that even, Virginia, if the outcome is contrary, young lady, to what you pray, if it's contrary because of your trust in God, and if the answer is, see, there were people in New Orleans who prayed with all their hearts that God would show mercy. The worst things they could have imagined happened. Is God less just? No. You don't deal with God based on outcomes. You have no basis to judge God on outcomes because He makes decisions based on a body of knowledge you don't have. So if we don't get through this, and if we go to the furnace, we still ain't balanced. Now at this point you figure, maybe God should do something to encourage them. Why not let it rain? And put out the furnaces. See, they made their speech, just standing there. Now the fire's there. So you sitting here calm in this church, but the brothers are looking at the fire. And in a few minutes, it's going to be 7 times hotter. Surely this is the time for God to do something. Let it rain. So the fire goes out. Anything. Just some sign from God that He liked my speech. I won't be in on Monday. Well, let the boss, why wait till Monday? Let the boss soften then. Give me a sign now, Lord. Well, all right, Brother Wright, since you're so firm and strong, go on home and have a peaceful Sabbath. Let that happen, Lord. How many of you know it don't happen like that? That don't happen like that. No, God pushes you all the way to the furnace. And as a reason, I keep asking, why didn't God do something? Something. You know what God could have done? Jermaine, Jesus could have showed up in the furnace before they got there. Come on, Jesus. And then Neb could have looked in and said, I see one man. I don't need to be in there with him. I see one man in the furnace. Did we put anybody in? How come the text is not written like that? How come I got to go in before you show up? Somebody talk to me this morning. You cannot deal with God based on outcomes. You got to deal with God based on His righteous character. He'll do right every time. May not be your right, your prayer, but He'll do right. He'll do right. See, rather than heal me from cancer, God, just prevent the confounded cancer. Let's keep it simple. Let me go to the doctor and he say, I don't see anything. Oh, he's got to wait until there's cancer all over my body. Then he shows up in the furnace. Somebody say amen out there. So the story leaves you kind of agonizing. Got a statement for you. I hope we can find this one, Dion. It is thus that God still tests His people. Can we get it? Come on, read it. Read it. Come on, everybody. It is thus. And if they... Whoa! He does what? You messed up before. What does He do? Same thing. You thought you got away? No. God doesn't leave you messed up. He's trying to leave you fixed up. So He brings you back to the same thing. That's why some of you keep meeting the same kind of people that you think you want to marry. Oh, Pastor, I'm back in it again. You know why you back in it? Because you messed up before. So God dresses that Negro, dresses that guy up in some kind of different clothes. Gives him a different hairdo and a different suit. Same stuff, all wrapped up again to see if you done learned anything. Don't get the pastor started now. I'll preach for the rest of the day. On this stuff. Yeah. And the second time, what happens? And the second time, the trial will come closer and he'll be more handsome the next time. Talk even sweeter. Still ought not marry him. Because you ain't learned nothing. Keep reading. Keep reading. This is what? This is what? It's continued. 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 You know, I've been trying to overcome this habit. Pastor, that's a bad habit. Y'all know about it. I told you about it in the pulpit. I eat late at night, trying to gain the victory. Trying to gain the victory. And sometimes I'll come in the house. Sister Wright's a good cook. But because she works all day, she cooks at night. And I'll come in at night from the board meeting. And all this food. How many of you know the fresh cooked food smells good? Meshach, and I'm trying to walk in, gonna be firm, gonna go on, straight on into bed. Yes, sir. Reading my Bible. And here are all these chocolates and greens. Smell it up! And I've been trying to gain the victory, Palmer. Now, I'd like to stand and tell you that I'm victory is mine. I'd like to sing that song. My song is, I can see victory. I can see it. Victory is coming. That's the best thing I can say. Victory is coming. Because sometimes, then I'll say, Steve, well, I'm just going to get a little bit of the cabbage. Just a little bit. Just a little bit. Sister Wright just starts smiling. Honey, I thought you said, no. You know, let me grow in grace. In the knowledge of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. Continues. Until what? Come on. Until they, or, here comes the negative part. Come on. It's always the fire next time. It's always. Well, let's close. Daniel 3, 23 and 25. Henry De Silva, Kathy Vess. God did nothing until they were in the furnace. I don't want you to ever forget that. Ed Wilson, God did nothing till they were where? Not near, not up to it. Where were they? Now, where was Jesus all this time? Where was Jesus? Well, he was right where he needed to be. I have this preacher's imagination. I think that when the fire got hotter, I picture one of the angels saying, Lord, if you're going to save them, maybe a couple of us need to get going. And Jesus said, no. Hold up. And then as they were wrapping them up, tying them up, toss them in, I hear Gabriel, fastest angel. Came to the Lord, it's getting tight, Jesus. I probably better get started. It's going to be close. And preacher's imagination. Don't look for this in Daniel. I was saying in Daniel. It's in my head. And I picture Jesus saying, no, it's plenty of time. Plenty of time. And by the way, Gabriel, relax. I'm going to handle this one personally. And then my preacher's imagination sees them, pick them up. Boy, he's picking them up. And even the Father now, I picture him saying to the Son, I think it's time to get going, son. And I hear Jesus say, it's all right, Pop. It's all right. It's going to be fine. I'll get going in just a millisecond. and then as they're flying through the air, Keith, they're flying through the air. I hear Father say to the Son, now is the time. And I hear Jesus respond, I'm in the furnace. God, what's the old song say? He may not come when you want him, but he's how? Right on time. That's why you're sitting here this morning. Now go on and tell the truth. Because in the midst of your fiery furnace, God showed up on time. Can I get a witness in this place today? God showed up on time. That's why you're here, Leonard. And when they landed in the furnace, they landed at the feet of Jesus. Now Nebuchadnezzar says, I believe we put in 3. Now I see 4. Well, the rest of the story we know. What you need to know is that if you haven't been to the furnace, it's coming. And it's God's purpose, Carolyn. It's God's purpose. It's God's purpose to join you in the furnace, not before. Let's pray.
We trust that this week's message was truly a blessing. If you have any questions about the message you heard or would like to contact a pastor for Bible studies, please let us know by selecting the Contact Us link on our homepage. Thank you again for joining us by listening, and remember to check back next week for another featured message.